What's going on, hip hop fans? Welcome to another edition of Hip Hop Head. My name is Julian Williams. Got a review for the new Roots album, How I Got Over. Personally, I do think this is one of the best albums since 2002's Phrenology. And in my opinion, I think Phrenology was a very underrated album. Some say it's perhaps the best album since Things Fall Apart. Me, I'm going to say Phrenology. Despite the fact that Game Theory was a very solid album, Rising Down was a good album, and The Tipping Point was a little below average for Roots standards. So what happens on this album? Well, this album, the Roots, and this is something that I appreciate about the Roots did not conform to any mainstream sound. They made music that they pretty much wanted to make on this record. And on top of that, the guest appearances were very good. On this record, because on this record you didn't have people trying to outshine the other person when they would during their verses. I was glad to see Phonte from Little Brother on this record. I like STS. He did a very good job on the ninth song of the record. I believe it was called Right On. He did a very good job. Very strong, and the choruses weren't necessarily catchy, but they were very strong. They had very strong choruses on this album, and other than strong choruses, they had. I mean, Black Dot was pretty much on point lyrically the whole album. Black Dot pretty much carried this album very well, along with the drumming of Questlove and the other instrumentation. I do like instrumentation, and I like the alternative hip hop route that the Roots have done over the past like 17 years since Organics. And also the first album, Do You Want More, which actually perhaps is pretty much one of my favorite Roots albums. One of my favorite albums of all time is Do You Want More. See, on this record you don't really have that. It's not. You could kind of tell the growth from Do You Want More to this album, How I Got Over. You could kind of tell the musical growth, because this is back when they had Malik B, and it was Black Dot and Malik B going back and forth on records. If you guys don't remember Distortion and Static, that was a hot record. It wasn't necessarily a big mainstream record, but it was a hot record because lyrically Black Dot was on point. Malik B was on point, and same with Proceed on that record. And unfortunately, we don't see any appearances from Malik B, which we should. I think we should see a little more Malik B, but he's no longer in the group. But I would like to see him on this record because this is perhaps one of the best records in years. Maybe in the last. However, Game Theory was a very solid effort, but this one I think surpasses Game Theory. That's just my opinion. So anyway, I'm gonna give this album 4.5 out of 5 mics. I'm gonna go with 4.5 because the Roots they didn't conform to any mainstream sound. The only big guest appearance was John Legend, which was on The Fire, and I do believe he could have been on number 10. I think it could have been his voice on number 10. Who knows? John Legend was pretty much the only big major guest appearance. And I did like the guest appearances. And how they pretty much how it was they kind of, with their rhyming styles like Phonte and STS, kind of went with the song and pretty much didn't try to outdo one another on the record. I like that. The guest appearances, pretty much what they did was they just did their part on the record and was just done with it. That's how it was. And Black Dot delivered very well. I like his vocal delivery on this record. So I'm gonna go with a 4.5 out of 5 album. Just simply based on that. I'm a big fan of alternative hip hop. I like how the Roots are kind of originators of it. I like how they bring instrumentation and lyricism, and they kind of fuse them together. and you kind of hear a little bit of a jazz sound. It's a little less rock inspired than Phrenology, and it's a little more hip hop and jazz oriented, and it has kind of a very soft, smooth sound to it. And I like the music. I like the music on the record because they don't depend on any beats. It's just everything is just based on instrumentation and rapping. And overall, this was a great record, perhaps one of the best to come out this year, one of the best. So 4.5 out of 5. Thanks for watching, guys. That was Hip Hop Head. Peace.